Hey, if you want to learn about net worth and how to increase your net worth, you've come to the right place. In this video, we're going to discuss 5 critical concepts on what is net worth and how to increase your net worth. Before we get into it, hit the like and subscribe button to get more content just like this. If you stay to the end, we'll describe the differences between wealthy versus rich and which ways you should set yourself up to be that way. So let's get right into it. My name is Nehemiah Jeffrey. Welcome to the channel. So number 1 is net worth. What is net worth? The first thing you got to realize is that you got to get into the mindset of changing the way you think about money and your relationship with money. So net worth is an idea that tells you that it is assets minus liabilities. So therefore you have to study. You have to study net worth. You have to study liabilities to understand fully what it is. So therefore you got to read, you got to look at YouTube videos like this to really get an idea as to what an asset is and what your true net worth is. Number 2, assets minus liabilities. So once you understand the idea of an asset is anything that holds a value or that can produce income for you. A liability is anything that is debt or anything that's encumbersome to your time, resources. But mainly it deals with an asset minus a liability, and you have your net worth. Now, let's say you have an asset that is producing income. An asset, let's say it produces $10,000 a month, and your debt amount is $10,000 a month, or your liability is $10,000 a month. What is your net worth? Effectively, it's zero. You have a zero net worth. Now, let's say if your cash flow is $10,000 a month and your liabilities is $5,000 a month, then you have a net worth of $5,000 per month of net cash flow, which is an asset for yourself. Now, there are different types of asset. Now you have other assets that doesn't necessarily produce income per se, but they retain value. And some assets like land, you may have land that's worth $1 million, but you're constantly giving money towards taxes and you're constantly giving money towards the upkeep of that land, let's say, but it has value in the sense that a developer can develop on the land. However, it's not producing income. The caveat though is that if you sell that particular land, you will retain $1 million. That $1 million will come back to your bank account. Now, if you have debt against that land, then you have to subtract the debt from that value. So let's say the first example is that you have $1 million worth of land. If you sell that land, you're going to have $1 million cash in your bank account. The second option is if you have debt on that land, let's say you have debt of $500,000 against that land, and the land is worth $1 million. You tell me, what's going to be your net worth? It's going to be $500,000 for that particular asset. So the way to really go about thinking about your assets is, what type of assets do you have? Do you have assets that retain value? Do you have assets that have income? And this goes wide ranging. We have 401ks, we have real estate, we have bonds, we have stocks, we have land, we have all different types of things that have value. And you have cars, you have even jewelry, bags, whatever you have that retain value or that can produce income from that asset is an asset. So, by the way, the type of assets I like are assets that produce income. If an asset is there and it doesn't produce income, I don't really like those types of assets. Now, that is the way in which you think about your own assets. So ultimately, you have to figure out what all the assets you have and what is all the debt that I have. Subtract liabilities from assets, that gives you your asset. Now, that gives you your net worth. Now, let's talk about how to accumulate assets, which is number 3, is to have the mindset to know that you have to accumulate assets. Now, I read this book the other day. It talks about how to accumulate assets, you have to always have an equity position in businesses. That's the way to accumulate assets. Now, if you accumulate real estate, that's an asset. If you accumulate a car, that's an asset. But a car depreciates in value. Real estate increases in value on average by 3% per year. So real estate is a good asset to have. A car may not be a good asset to have, but it depends on the type of car that you get. I met a guy the other day. He has this truck. I don't know the name of the truck, but he bought the car for $15,000 in like 2016, 2015. The car is still worth $15,000. That car has retained its value. So that ultimately is an asset. He paid it off, paid off this $15,000. If he want to sell that car, he'll get back what he paid for the car, which is the 15 grand. That's an asset. Okay, so you have to figure out what type of asset you want to accumulate. So you can start a business. That's an asset. You can do all different types of things to accumulate assets. Ultimately, you want to reduce the amount of debt you have at any given time. The more debt you have, the worse position you're in. So that's debt against your business, credit card debt. Any type of debt, you should be aggressively trying to eliminate that debt at all costs. Okay? The less debt you have, the more assets you have. So you need to put together a plan to eliminate debt. Now, how to do that? Well, you got to put together a budget. You need a budget. Can't just spend frivolously. You got to think about how you're going to systematically pay off the debt to increase the amount of net worth you have. So you can decrease debt, increase assets. And the last thing is that you got to know what the difference is between being rich versus wealthy. Now, let's say you play in the NBA, you accumulate $1 million. Let's say you accumulate $10 million for the year, and you don't make any sort of other investments. Yeah, some people may say you're rich. Yeah, you're pretty rich. I mean, you're not rich, but you're rich. You're not rich, but you're rich. All right, that's fine. You keep your $10 million bucks. You buy you a house for $2 million. You pay your taxes, and you're like, I'm doing well. I'm good. I don't have to worry about anything. I pay myself, $50,000 a year. I pay my food. Kids go to school. I'm okay. Okay, that money can last your lifetime. However, somebody that's wealthy, it's like, where can I put a port? Not the whole 10 million. What can I put? Maybe 15% of this money into an asset that can produce more assets for myself, that can produce more babies for myself, that can produce dividends for myself for the long term. That's how you got to think. That's how the wealthy think. Okay, number one, they invest in businesses where they have an equity ownership, and then number two, they invest in businesses where they can have some sort of return coming back every single month, every single quarter, every single year, what have you. That's the type of attitude you got to have. But on that note, check out my other video here. I'm going to discuss ways to improve your pockets. Until the next time, take care.